Herzlich willkommen, Herr Ruetz, herzlich willkommen, Herr Buller.
Hallo.
Hallo zusammen.
Hallo, guten Tag.
Genau.
Ja, Herr Ruetz, ich will gleich mal einsteigen in eine Frage. Sie sind auch schon während der Pressekonferenz auf dieses Thema eingegangen. Es ist ja nun so, das New Normal heißt offenbar, dass man sich auf ständige Veränderungen einstellen muss, Pläne umwerfen muss. Das haben Sie jetzt am eigenen Leib auch erfahren bei dieser Veranstaltung, bei We Love Travel. Eigentlich sollte es ja live stattfinden. Nun ist die Veranstaltung virtuell. Herr Ruetz, müssen wir uns jetzt von den Live-Events langfristig verabschieden?
Natürlich nein. Ich will eine Lanze brechen für die Live-Communication, weil man einen Handschlag übers Internet halt noch nicht machen kann. Wenn ich ein Gegenwarts- oder Zukunftsforscher wäre, dann würde ich natürlich sagen, mich interessiert die nächste Woche, erstens. Mich interessiert zweitens das nächste Frühjahr und mich interessiert das Post-Covid-Zeitalter, der New Normal, von dem wir alle sprechen. Aber wie sich eben auch die Entwicklungen hier in Berlin zeigen, wir senden hier von 2 Bühnen live. Wir sind mit Ihnen in Hamburg und mit Michael Buller in München verbunden. Wir haben nachher Speaker aus New York, aus der ganzen Bundesrepublik, aus Europa. Wie sich diese Umstände zeigen, es ist fast nichts mehr planbar. Und das, glaube ich, ist ein Trend, der sich eben auch beim Reisen fortsetzt. Die Gäste, die Kunden, die Reisenden sind verunsichert und wollen eigentlich
to do, and they want to book as late as possible so that they don't then have to face an accommodation ban or a flight that is cancelled, and that will be the challenge. Mr. Buller, how do you see the development from the tourism point of view? In the summer we thought it looks quite good, there are more bookings, and traveling is again possible. And now we see that there are different pieces here and there, travel advisories here and there. How should the tourism industry deal with it?
Realistisch war, dass auch dieser Sommer nicht
I think it was realistic that this summer didn't work well. And the problem is that the travel industry within a short period of time came up with different kind of concepts, hygiene concepts. And they have to work, but we also have consumers or travelers who in their private life are cautious, and that's a problem that we are facing now, and that's a problem for the tourism industry. And we also have to say that tourism is not a hobby industry, it's about 3 million jobs. And we make sure that with 16 tourists we create a job abroad, and we are a large part of this economic chain. And if we cannot travel anymore, then also our export industry isn't working anymore. You have to adhere to the rules, and we also have to do it in our private life. There are rules that aren't that bad, actually. To have a mask and to wear a mask, it really is not a problem. And to keep distance, sometimes I wish there had been more distance before and here and there. And the rules for getting on a plane and getting off a plane are good. And if we all stick to the rules, then we can have a normal life. And I don't want to don't leave home anymore for the next 12 months, but lead a regular life and just use my common sense. And I think that's what we need at the moment. Because if we act with a lot of fear and laissez-faire, that leads to the fact that infection figures are increasing, are going through the roof. It says that we are still in the middle of the crisis, and you mentioned it. And that has to do with the fact that many people don't stick to the rules. Yesterday evening, new risk areas were announced. Infection figures are increasing not just in Germany, but also in the neighboring countries. Some people also say there are opportunities in a crisis. Where do you see opportunities, Mr. Ruetz? Well, the ITB is at the interface of 2 important industries. The international travel industry, we have customers from more than 180 normality countries, and then there's the interface to the event industry, trade fairs and regular events. And if we look at the leadership of those two important industries, we need to be able to adapt. Back in the 60s, you were being punished when you wrote with your left hand, and you had to write with your right hand. We have to use ambidextry to react to the current challenge and the development of the new normal in ITB 2021 won't be the same as now or the last one. And traveling, even after Corona, won't be the same as before. And what gives us reason to hope is that colleagues in China, at the ITB China, do a series of 7 live events in 7 big Chinese cities with hundreds of participants who can meet in person. And that just goes to show, if there's a concept, a hygiene concept, and there's nothing safer than a trade fair premises where you can actually have meetings. And of course, it depends on the entry and exit into that country. Mr. Ruetz, can you say what's the current knowledge on the ITB in Berlin next year? Do you think it will be live? Well, I'd like to look into the crystal ball, what happens in March 2021. The experience of last week is that Berlin suddenly turned totally red. It's like one entire risk area, and there's an accommodation area for people coming from there's an accommodation ban for people coming from Berlin. And if we all vaccinate, and everything will be green, and middle green would mean that those who cannot travel can join us live via the stream. Or the light green probably be that we will have a digital event if the respective authorities prohibit live events. No one knows that. We are expecting any kind of scenario, and we observe the situation as it is. I do understand. Mr. Buller, how do you look into the future? On what does it depend that tourism kicks back in again? And what are the parameters you're calling for? Well, Mr. Ruetz mentioned it. Probably the safest place at the moment is a trade fair, because there are hygiene rules, and tourism businesses as well, because they have rules. But that's not enough. We have consumers who are really unsure what to do now, and that's understandable if they listen to the news every day. I think we will need aid. And Mr. Altmaier mentioned it, up to the middle or end of June of next year, he wants to extend aid. So for aid for smaller companies and the big companies. And of course, looking at the time that we have now, it will be almost 12 months of still sand. If we think up to March, in the topic of digitalization hasn't gone away. In recent years, we heard from companies we don't have time to focus on digitalization because we have a lot to do. There's no staff and we have no money for it, or not enough money, and we have to keep it together. And I think we have to react to it now. And maybe that we have to fund change of business models, and that they be more sustainable, so that we use this time where you can try out anything possible, that it's, this time is used in an optimum way. Okay, in order to spread a bit of optimism, maybe you'd like to mention 2 points, positive points for the future. Mr. Ruetz, well, I'd like to start. I'm in a positive mood. It is that in September we had an IFA event, and we are able to show that live events are possible with more than 6,000 participants and more than 150,000 participants participating online. And I'm also quite positive because a good friend of the ITB wrote to me recently, and here's a quote: "You know how they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a community to create an event like ITB, and you strongly feel the support of the travel community for the ITB. I'm quite optimistic that there will be a new normal and that Finnair needs to stop to sell business class food in supermarkets." Okay, great. Then I pass the floor to Mr. Buller. What are your 2 positive points for the future? Well, first of all, and I think that studies are going to show that later on, is that people want to travel, and the wish for traveling is huge, and it's important. And I do believe that the first thing we need to keep in mind that this wish hasn't disappeared, it's still there. And secondly, if you look at the test results at the airports, and you saw that in Spain 0.23% of travelers who returned had a positive corona test. And if you enter a tourism system as a healthy person, that you also remain healthy. That's my understanding. And I see a big opportunity is like a cruise ship. It's like a closed space. And if there are only healthy people on it, then nobody can get infected by corona. So if you look at traveling from the right angle and if you stick to the rules, then it helps to not spreading the disease. What's important is that travelers stick to the rules, to the hygiene rules, and these are just minimum rules, and it shouldn't be a problem. And I think if these 2 things come together, then also for next year I see good opportunities for the tourism industry. Well, great. Thanks a lot, Mr. Ruetz and Mr. Buller. Thanks for the introductory words.